Shamans love playing aggro. I mean, he's playing Murloc Mage.
It's my type of guy.
I mean, he's playing even Shaman. So there you go.
If you're not rooting for him, you're doing it wrong, man.
Yeah.
I was saying that I want to see some different decks, and here we have it.
Yeah. So he sticks to his guns. And also, SamTsao, when he was first kind of doing well last year in the Bahamas, he was like, yeah, I'm not sure if I want to take Hearthstone like super seriously or if I want to focus on my studies. And here he is a year and a half later, sponsored, internationally traveling, competing for points, going to tour stops, and still doing fairly well given his appearance rate. Like, he doesn't actually go to all the tour stops, but when he does, he still does fairly consistently, which is just a mark that he's not a flash in the pan. Some players who make deep runs in World Championships, we don't hear much about them the next year. But SamTsao is not one of those players.
Yeah, I mean, you'll just see some of that sometimes in esports, especially Hearthstone, where a player will be very good, but then they'll be unsure, like, do I want to do this full time? And then they just accidentally just start doing it.
Accidentally?
Yeah.
Crap, I just by accident signed up for this
You win one
tour
tournament, and it's just like, all right, I guess I'll go again. Oh, look,
Yeah.
I did well. And then you just keep doing it. And then at some point, you just become washed and you lose, and then you have to figure out, is it time to join Froden on the casting desk? And
no.
I decided, yeah, it was.
Well, you followed up championship second place with a 9th place
I
finish.
lost to the 15-year-old amnesiac, and my life was forever changed.
That's right. I mean, there's definitely a couple people that could relate to losing to amnesiac on the big stage. But I think most people would say you're doing an excellent job on the desktop.
Hope so.
SamTsao coining out this vicious scale high to answer the early game board. Even Shaman is one of those decks that actually can deal with early boards fairly well, given how efficient their tempo is early on.
Oh yeah, Mercspark Eel is just one of the best anti-aggro cards.
This is something that I was thinking about too. You know, SamTsao's order of coining out the primal or coining out the visual scale hide versus the primal fin. Primal fin by now would give him an extra token versus the scale hide, gets him a little bit better board presence. And now that we're going to turn 3, I'm afraid of things like the unidentified maul, which come into play, as opposed to, and also the Void Ripper. So this is something that SamTsao kind of mapped out in his mind, but thankfully for him, he's not getting punished for it.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to pick and choose what cards to respect, and just definitely going to work out for him here.
Yeah, pick your poison.
I was saying a little bit earlier in the cast that we haven't seen that much even Shaman, and then a player named Ike who always makes some really wacky decks tweeted at me saying, the reason you're not seeing even Shaman is because they're not playing my list. It's the best. It has
That's the most Ike tweet ever.
Thunderhead and Zaps, and that's the reason they're not winning. So he asked me to bring that up, and if you're looking for a good even Shaman list, I guess check out Ike.
The thing about even Shaman is that I feel like I want to put 40 cards in that deck. There's just so many pretty good but not amazing even cost cards that I can't tell if it's good. Like, is the Corpse Taker package the way to go? Is the Thunderhead Overload? Is it both and you just kind of cut your top end? Like, I feel like there's so many ways you can justify building that even Shaman deck that's fairly hard to make it work. And some players who get really far on ladder with it swear by this deck. They think it's amazing. It has good matches against a lot of Druids because it has Hex in it to answer big threats, or even against cube decks. I mean, I personally don't know.
Yeah, I mean, overall, just the deck doesn't have too many polarized matchups. Part of the reason we did not see it for so long, just because even Warlock with the Defile and the Hellfire does so well against it, and also just with the popularity of Druid, just Spreading Plague is an absolute nightmare for this deck, to the point that when you saw some even Shamans teching Mossy Horror, which almost always kills half their minions, you know that Spreading Plague is a big problem for the deck.
That's so funny. Yeah, like so many decks that are naturally playing 2 attack or lower minions play Mossy Horror. Like when Zoo was playing it, for example, I was like, man, that's just so funny because it dunks half your own deck. SamTsao going to have his own Paladin hero power if he plays his second Primal Fin Totem.
I gotta say though, when that last wave of nerfs come out, not only was I hoping for Giggling Inventor, but I was hoping for the other Taunt Nightmare, the Spreading Plague as well. Just what it does to that metagame, it warps it so much.
I don't think many people will disagree with you there.
Yeah, not a bold opinion.
You're so brave, Nostam.
Thank you.
Hating on Spreading Plague. That Blessing of Might was actually a pretty important pickup here for Boar because it helps him actually answer one of these Primal Fin Totems very efficiently. And
he does have a good bit of time, though, because a lot of times once Sea Giant comes down, that's when you're under pressure to actually start doing things. But until that Sea Giant comes down, just being able to hit that button every single turn and then get to turns with Level Up and Vile Spine could be ways that you swing back in the game.
That's true. Righteous Protector feels fairly similar to Stonehill Defender in this spot too, because you kind of want just 2 attacks with the Stonehill Defender to absorb. Turn 4 is often the Corpse Taker turn. Let me see if SamTsao is playing that build. 1 second.
And it was actually the case that in the last metagame before the nerfs, nobody was actually playing Stonehill Defenders because they needed this room for something like Blood Knight, but now with Giggling Inventor gone, they got a little bit more room in the deck to put that right back in.
Yep. Yeah, I like it. Oh! Unnerfed Corridor Creeper!
What a guy.
Hex. Now, this is really scary for SamTsao because he is under threat of a level up. And that could just dominate the board to the point where SamTsao falls too far behind.
Yeah, a lot of times when even Shaman wins this matchup, it's because they get bored and then they never lose it. It's really hard to even come back when you have Hagatha, just because if you then do that AoE turn, it gives Odd Paladin another turn to just redevelop yourself. So you really have to just play from ahead, and he's already in that position where he's trying to answer the things that BoarControl is doing, and being able to just push that button every single turn. He's just going to fall slowly further and further behind in this game.
Yeah, and that's actually one reason why I kind of like when SamTsao was considering using Earthen Might on the Primal Fin Totem, because you want each of your minions to be able to attack to help answer these boards. You know, to be honest, Corridor Creeper is really threatening, but you need multiple small attacks to get through these Odd Paladin boards efficiently.
Yeah, and just also giving it the attack means that then BoarControl can't trade into it for free.
Right. Granted, he went for the second Primal Fin Totem because he saw that BoarControl couldn't deal with his first Primal Fin efficiently, so he was making a read that he still can't deal with it, so the Dusting of Might was all that much more important. But now I think he's going to fall very far behind.
Yeah, this 5/5 Corridor Creeper lines up so well to then try and clear this board. This Fungal Mancer is going to leave SamTsao with absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing, and no Hagatha in hand. This is going to be looking like lights out unless SamTsao can find, say, Knife Juggler.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the late game, SamTsao is running both Kalamos and Hagatha, so he has the 2 different instances of the AoE, which can sometimes run your Odd Paladin out of cards, but now we see that BoarControl just has that Divine Favor in hand, so it's not going to be too realistic to then just dwindle your opponent's hand.
Yeah, that's actually another thing to consider as well, which is even Shaman players are are often disagreeing with how to build their top end. You know, are they playing the Elemental package, which, as much as you'd think it makes it really good because it has versatility in its gameplay, and also makes it a little bit more inconsistent because you're holding cards to try to combo the Elemental chains of Battle Cries. So I personally like the leaner, faster one because even Shaman tries to fight for tempo with the cheap hero power, so why not just play more into that? But some players really like having that top end just in case.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kalamos is very good in the deck, so then you have to include the elementals to make that work. And you were saying before that you always feel like you want to play 40 cards, and I remember in the last tournament that I played in, I didn't realize that I was playing Kalamos with just 3 elementals in the deck. It was just, actually maybe it was only the fire elementals. It was just...
No Phoenixes or...
Yeah, I cut everything, but I still played Kalamos, and it just kept being active with fire elemental anyway.
And like, I just get baited so much because I'm like, okay, so do I want to save this? Like, because I'm running out of value, do I want to play Earthen Might for the tempo, or do I want to play for the value? And it's all these other questions, but I can relate a lot to what you're saying. I also can relate a lot to this exact board state as an even Shaman player. I feel like I lose a lot to these kinds of boards. And more importantly, whenever I queue up this deck on ladder, I just get pummeled a lot, even in matches I think I'm good against.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest reason to play even Shaman is just how well it utilizes Sea Giant, and also just having access to Merc, Spark, Eel. And just not finding the Sea Giant here. When we saw on, say, turn 3 or 4, it could have been absolutely amazing.
Jesus.
But now, Sunkeeper Tarim, I don't think he lives another turn for that Hagatha.
I know, it's so close. Like, SamTsao was very close to stabilizing, but just was not able to get the early game board. And I kind of have to wonder if perhaps some of the building blocks, did he underestimate how fast Paladin can win back the board? Or did he rather overestimate having the importance of the Primal Fins early on, and as a result had 0-3s that couldn't attack back?
Sunkeeper Tarim, man, is just the best card in the game that just does not see play at the moment. Some people are playing even Paladin just because of how good that card is. I think, I was talking to one player that said he brought even Paladin to this tournament. I think it was Shoop, because he said he was staring at his hand. It was 2 Bone Mares and Tyrion, and he said it was not going too well for him.
Because not enough terms?
Yeah.
Or is he being sarcastic, like, oh, I'm doing great?
No, like that was his opening hand. So
yeah.
He was losing.
Yikes. Yeah, GG. Well, I mean, his first mistake could be playing so many 8-drops. I've been seeing a lot of even paladins cut down to just Valinir at the top, and then not have much else afterwards.
Yeah, I feel like that makes sense just because of how much value just
Right.
Valinir is on itself.
In Calamos, it's like you're trying to win the board decisively by turn 3 or 4, and then use that to snowball into an advantage.
Frodan, it is 2018.
Murloc
Raider is in the deck.
Is this a rehearsal? Am I watching Basic Mage go up against Basic Hunter?
Man.
Where it's like Murloc Raider into Bluegill Warrior into Wolf Rider?
I really didn't think I'd see the day where Murloc Raider would make its competitive debut. A lot of times, even in this Murloc Mage, they don't even play this card. But with Mana Worm now at 2, you lose that 1/1 drop, and I guess this is the replacement.
Yeah. Well, good news for all those aggressive Mage player fans. With Mana Worm out, Murloc Tidecaller is still like the best 1-drop in the game. BoarControl really looking for that candle shot, which can pretty much answer all the Murloc early game, but without it, could be a little bit devastating.
One of the things that Osaka said to me that if there was no aggro in this tournament, the best lineup would include both Murloc Mage and also Murloc Warlock. And he also said that, in his opinion, Murloc Warlock is better than Murloc Mage.
I'm going to go one level deeper. I think Murloc Shaman is not that bad.
With
because
the quest?
Well, see, okay, so I tried playing the quest, and I had my win rate with mulliganing the quest was 20% higher than having the quest in my hand.
So
I actually won the
it.
games because I kept mulliganing the quest.
Gotcha.
I kept the quest against like Warrior, for example, to help give me extra resources, but I mulliganed almost every time, which is funny. But the reason why is because you have not only War Leader and the Mega Sword, but you also have Bloodlust. And Shaman actually has that Ghost Angler, which is really nice for Hagatha as a way to reload. So I felt like it was really nice, but overall it is very gimmicky. I would not recommend playing it.
I mean, maybe just all the Murloc decks are just good, and we're all in denial.
Yeah. Murloc Druid can be a real thing. Ultimate Infestation with Soul Deforest and Zavador. What do you think about that? You can even put Spreading Plague in that deck.
Man, the fact that War Leader used to give the 1 HP as well, that card is just so good as is, and to think that it was even better.
Look at this opening hand, though. If you play Cold Ice Seer, that thing's out of range. The Tidecaller is out of range of the Flanking Strike.
Yeah.
That could be bad news for BoarControl. And without that candle shot early on, he's thinking about if there's a real need for him to coin out a 3-mana play right now just to answer the board state.
I mean, one of the things that Death Rattle Hunters that it struggles against is just decks that put down a lot of minions on the board, which a lot of people just look to just zoo to do it. But now with these Murloc decks, it could be something that also takes advantage of that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, I do not envy Boar's position. Terrascale Stalker just to get board presence.
And that's a lot of respect coming out, realizing that if he did not play something there, this is a good curve. We were making fun of Murloc Raider, but it's going to get thick.
Maybe you were making fun of Murloc Raider. Okay, I was too. But I also, it was like a 50-50. I joke because I also thought it was partially true. And SamTsao has the opportunity to go for Cold Ice Seer, even pick up a value trade and try to preserve the board as best he can with the Megasaur. And I like that the most. Slamming Megasaur with 3 Murlocs on 4 is a recipe for success.
Yeah, especially it's the case that you just saw the coin come out. You have not seen a candle shot thus far, so it's very unlikely that BoarControl has it in his hand. Being able to take that value trade and set up for the Gentle Megasaur next turn.
Yeah, and this is painful because you would obviously love for the Ooze to line up against Alaneth, but desperate times calls for desperate measures.
I also just love how well this deck uses Book of Specters, because that's just a card that people thought was really good, but then they were also thinking, like, what does it even go in? Like, it could just be the case where it's a good card that doesn't really fit anywhere, but this +1/+1 just puts on so much pressure.
+1/+1. I wonder if how good Can't Be Targeted is as well coming up on the Flanking Strike turn. The only problem is that if you don't pick +1/+1, there's no really good trades outside the Tidecaller. And the whole purpose of Can't Be Targeted is to protect the Tidecaller as best as you can because it's your biggest threat outside the Megasaur.
Yeah, I feel like just the +1/+1 just makes it so that BoarControl is just dying so fast here that even if the Flanking Strike comes out, you're pushing so much damage on the backswing.
Yeah, I think I would like the +1/+1 just overall push damage. Not the end of the world. And the way the +1/+1 works with Volcanic Might, there's no good trades for the ooze. Everything it takes, it trades evenly at best.
He also just has the option to take that value trade with the
Oh
Seer
yeah,
now.
you're right, because it becomes a 3/4. Oh my gosh. It's so powerful.
But it's pretty interesting, like, for what looked like an obvious play, SamTsao is still just taking his time and just considering all the options there. It's always nice to see a player play slow, consider it all.
Yeah, SamTsao actually had a bit of a reputation amongst the production crew at HCT for being a rover. And I like it for what you said, too, because I feel like, especially for Asia Pacific, they tend to rush their plays a lot more than the other regions when I watch them compete. And I think I've seen it backfire more often than not, like in terms of just like playing fast and then the player like regrets it. Even coming down to just simply selecting the wrong card. Not even, it's not about a decision thing. It's literally like they played too fast and they played the wrong card, or they hero powered the wrong thing.
I mean, some players I feel like they play way too fast. An example of that would be sometimes when I watch Hot Meowth play, he just slams things and doesn't really take the time. I remember he ended up missing lethal against Just Saying at one of the other events, and also then he played against Just Saying again in playoffs, and again he just played too quickly and had a big blunder.
Was that the PAX event? Or
Yeah,
was that
it was both PAX and then playoffs that he played Saiyan twice and just messed up against him 2 times in a row.
Well, BoarControl is in a bad spot. Ziliax can buy some time, but it's not ideal because he's staring at, let's see he trades into the 4/2. There's still 13 power on board. It'd be at 13 life. A single burn spell is death.
Yeah, SamTsao definitely came in with the plan that he was hoping for this Murloc Mage to line up into the Hunter. And this is why, just being able to just find this turn 6 incredible board.
Yeah, and you can see how the deck kind of even synergizes so well with itself. You would think Murloc Mage doesn't make sense, but because Murlocs are so cheap, Stargazer Luna has so many good hits compared to some of the more expensive spells like Secrets that you would hit off of the traditional
And then
aggro
still,
mage.
only being able to draw 1 minion there. Not ideal. Just the only spells that they play in the deck are just the Book, the Frostbolt, and the Fireball.
So I think SamTsao is considering the possibility of Deathstalker Rexar next turn. What's the best possible scenario, and or rather board you can set up, and I think it involves him not committing too many low health minions on the board. So I'd like to see this ping instead of the Murloc Tide Hunter being played.
Yeah, I mean, he could play the Tide Hunter knowing that his opponent is just dead if the Rexar comes out.
Oh yeah, you're right. He just wins anyways if Rexar comes out. I like that then.
But for sure that if the ping changed the math on that Rexar, he would definitely go for it there. But still, going for it. Don't see a big difference.
Yeah.
I feel like this is just a little bit worse versus something like Witchwood Grizzly, but I think even if that was the case, probably still dead. And there you go. Murloc Raider on 1. Just won a game.
Whatever they are planning.
But they definitely are joining a team together, and they will have exciting news. And not too big of a surprise to see, them being so close, playing similar things.
Yeah.
And SamTsao just, playing all these decks that go wide on the board, the Murloc Mage, the Even Shaman, and the Token Druid, trying to take advantage of the fact that Death Rattle Hunter truly does not deal with it well.
Yeah, the only thing is this is a deck that tends to do fairly well against wide decks. Defile is a big problem against for Shaman in general.
And we're going to get to see that here, I'd imagine.
Yeah. I mean, this is Cube Warlock with all of its glory. The one nice caveat to everything that I just said is Shaman has Hex, which can deal with Cube plays very well if they don't pop it immediately. Or even just a raw Void Lord can get Hexed. And that also affects the Blood River Gul'dan pool.
I mean, it's also the case that if, say, they don't find that early Defile or Hellfire, if you're able to stick that Corpse Taker to board, you say use that Flame Tongue or an Earthen Might, with Wind Fury, you could just potentially kill your opponent so quickly as the Even Shaman.
Also, this Coldblood Librarian is very nice. Prevents SamTsao from stacking the board advantage with just his hero power.
And I feel like that was actually a little bit interesting decision. BoarControl instantly went for the tap, but Acidic Swampooze actually shuts down a couple plays from SamTsao that turn. Say like the Primal Fin would be a little bit too awkward to play. And also, if you just say play your minions, it gives you more turns to tap later in the game.
One of the things I've also seen Shamans do, if it's a bad enough matchup, is that they just immediately start planning for the late stage of the game. You see them keep like Hagatha, for example. It's like, well, it's very clear that I'm never going to be able to build a board. My only way to win is very similar to, say, like a Deathstalk or Rexar situation, where I try to generate a ton of extra value and drag into the fatigue stage. And that is something that I do like about Even Shaman. It has a lot of ability to go long if needed.
Yeah, Hagatha always makes it that there's a chance in the game that you could come back. And BoarControl, considering playing that Prince, I definitely think it makes a lot of sense to just play your minions out on curve in this matchup, just because if you slow things down, you get to that AoE that just really just wins you the game on the spot. So just even just putting this 3/3 down, what are you afraid of coming out from the Even Shaman?
Yeah, for 4 mana, or sorry, up to 4 mana, not really much.
Some people get too hung up on, say, keeping this Prince Taldaram for a crazy swing turn,
Right.
copying a cube or a Doomguard. But sometimes just playing it as a 3/3 on curve, that's enough. You see that sometimes even just with mind control tech, that sometimes just playing it on 3 is going to be better than waiting for them to have 4 minions. But BoarControl, again, instead of playing out his curve, just going to continue to tap.
Yeah.
And I feel like that just could be the case because SamTsao has mounted absolutely 0 pressure so far.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show you that value of having a Coldblight Librarian early on. Just we're kind of talking about how you can keep the board in check. SamTsao has no real synergy for things like this Direwolf Alpha or Flame Tongues on him yet. Although, like we kind of mentioned, it could be a blessing in disguise that he has a lot of his top end with Lich King and Sea Giant. It could end up making it very difficult for BoarControl to remove, given that you know, Boar has combo pieces, but nothing substantial in the hand right now.
Yeah, and I agree. And I feel like in this position as SamTsao, you just have to go for the Fire Plume Phoenix, just because if you do go for this Corpse Taker and hope that it sticks, there's just too many answers to it. It dies to both Hellfire and the Spellstone. And I feel like that's going to be the way that you're going to try and win this game, but I guess he thinks he's in that bad of a position that he needs to do this right now.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And that just really goes to show how unfavored he thinks he feels.
Yeah, this is a tough matchup to say the least. Well, now Boar has a really interesting position where he doesn't have to remove the Corpse Taker. Could end up just
I don't know, man.
be really greedy.
That card, I feel like, is the only way you lose.
I agree. I like just playing the Spellstone or removing, but saving Spellstone also has a lot of value because there's some heavy hitting minions like Fire Elemental, which can get easily sniped by the same Spellstone.
I think it's also probably the case that sometimes if you play a little bit too quickly, you could give your opponent, say, a read on your hand.
True.
So then if you, say, rope it out a little bit, make it seem like you have a little bit of a harder decision.
Yeah, I mean, so if you play Prince Taldaram and your opponent hexes to get past it, you still could answer with Ziliax.
I'm worried about Earthen Might buffing this thing up.
Oh, okay, you're right. Earthen Might could be a pretty problem too.
If SamTsao just had 2 of those in hand, just 14 damage on the spot, a 7/7 would be pretty hard to answer.
But you do have the Spellstone too.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so like he still has to trade into this 3/3 in some capacity. I kind of like it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes a little bit of sense, especially you do get to hold these Spellstones.
The one thing I think I like the most about this play too is, sorry, the second thing I like the most besides the fact that it's pretty cool and unusual, is that it also buys BoarControl not only removal, but also a little bit of life to work with. So that way, like, if his opponent couldn't deal with it, maybe that life, or sorry, that lifesteal on the Corpse Taker ends up buying him enough time where all those times he life taps or takes damage, he's not as worried about.
Right. And I like that he's just potentially going back up to 30 here after just tapping in the early game. Just really showing that SamTsao has just been able to just do nothing this game so far. A lot of times you're looking to, say, push lethal in the turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, but your opponent being at 30, not great.
Yeah. Ziliax, quite possibly the second most impactful card from Boomsday. Universally, I mean, you could pick some individual cards like Green Petal Florist being really sick for a specific class, but after Galien Venner, I think Ziliax is one of the best cards and also one of the most good feel cards. You know, I love playing Ziliax.
Yeah, I mean, it was the case that a lot of people only played it in the mech decks at the start, but now they're coming out and just realizing that you can just put this thing in anything.
Yeah, it never feels bad to play Ziliax.
I feel like half the time I'm playing Even Shaman, I just get to the point in the game so quickly where it's just like, all right, Hagatha or Lich King, you gotta go in this game.
Right.
But
Yeah, I feel it's kind. I know what you mean, and even then they're not as reliable because you're like, okay, Lich King needs to hit this spell, or Hagatha needs to pick up
I needed
impactful spells.
specifically exactly Army of the Dead into 2 Sea Giants.
Yeah, or like the exact burst you need.
So I feel like this is going to be a really important decision from SamTsao, whether he wants to play an aggressive or passive game, because he could go for the board clear with this double Flame Tongue Totem, or if he feels like he needs to be a little bit more aggressive, he could just jam one of these 6 drops and force, say, BoarControl to maybe make a trade with this Mountain Giant.
Yeah, I kind of like the trade on the Mountain Giant because I feel like this is a position where you can start losing from if they end up using removal tools like Hellfire to push through. I mean, Direwolf Alpha isn't exactly great considering that you haven't been able to build up a big board. So I think this is perfectly reasonable to trade. Yeah. Not to mention the threat of Cube. Your opponent plays Cube on a Giant.
I think what you're hoping for really is just that Lich King maybe lives more than 1 turn. So if you just slow down the game to that point.
Right. This is threatening enough board too that BoarControl might Hellfire, and then Lack Development gives you the ability to play like Gen Greymane, so that you can actually start answering the board state, and then Lich King can come down afterwards.
Now, moving forward, if this does get AoE'd, I wonder if one of the things SamTsao has to think about if he should stop hero powering because it does make Lord Godfrey that much better. So say if he does play one of these 6 drops, should he hero power with it?
When you have Flame Tongue Totem and Sea Giant in your hand,
it's hard not to.
It feels like you want to hero power still as much as you can, but I agree. Like if it might be helping BoarControl more than hurting him.
But man, BoarControl just has access to so many good ways to deal with this board, no matter how he wants to do it. Just being able to slow down this game, when you eventually get to Gul'dan, that beats Hagatha pretty well. I
mean, there might even be a case for Godfrey because of how much good AoE and removal he has in his hand. And
the 4/4 just fights on the board as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like out of range of Fire Elemental.
That works.
I think this is the best play. Oh, okay.
It's the worst play. Dies the Argent Commander. It's always just correct.
It's like, oh my god, you didn't play it. Because he didn't.
He actually looked upset. I don't understand how you could look that upset in the position that he is in this game. I get that you just got punished by, like, the only answer. Like, the play was still just good. A little bit unfortunate, but look at the game state. What are you mad about? You're chilling, man.
It was more like, you were hoping he wouldn't have it. So, yeah. Knowing what most people said about Boar, I think that's definitely a tame response compared to him a year ago or 2 years ago.
He used to just pop off on the camera.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you have a lot of time and breathing room. But also I kind of wanted to start digging deeper into my deck to find a way to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit weird if you just sit back and just play AoE after AoE, and sometimes you can potentially run out of it. So at some point, BoarControl does have to start playing some threats. He also knows that playing Void Lords from hand isn't ideal just because SamTsao does play 2 copies of Hex and his Even Shaman.
Right, and I don't know. I think just answering this and then developing a little bit on the board is perfectly fine. Acidic Swamp Ooze has nothing important to hit. Okay.
I mean,
a little bit, like, I guess the 2 life doesn't matter. I was like, does he want to gain a little bit more life? But he was on 10 cards, right? So he wanted to play 2 cards first.
Yeah, realizing that if he did go for that tap, it would have felt pretty silly.
So now 1 Spellstone's being used. SamTsao might feel a little bit better about playing Lich King, but it does get answered by the 2nd Spellstone. But I don't think it's kind of like what you're talking about. I think at this point you might be hoping that Lich King just survives, and even then, he still might get Army of the Dead.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking at Army of the Dead as the only card to really bail him out here. Doom Pact will help you deal with, a crazy cube board, but it doesn't really ever win you the game. He also has access to just Faceless this Lich King.
And Spellstone.
Yeah, that turn lines up pretty good.
Oh my goodness.
BoarControl has just been copying SamTsao's good plays. The Corpse Surge comes down, Prince is there to steal it. And now Lich King, Faceless does the job.
Okay. Hagatha gives SamTsao an actual reasonable pivot.
This is even Shaman. You just get to the point of the game. Lich King and Hagatha, please help me out. Please.
Well, I mean, Kalamos also can do some big damage too. But yeah, it's definitely the Hagatha Lich King.
Is this the turn that you do Doom Pact? A lot of times you don't want to eat through your deck too much, and now if you hold the Hex, you then have that for, say, something like a Void Lord, which you'd rather much use the Hex on that than the Doom Pact.
The development after Doom Pact or Hex is still pretty bad no matter what, so I think you might be onto something. Doom Pact also gets worse with things like Void Lord, because one, it doesn't even clear the board, and two, if they have multiple like Void Walkers and Void Lord back, you basically destroy like half your remaining deck. So
yeah, I feel like the only other play would just be get Hagatha up this turn and give him a turn to potentially play on the board. But I definitely don't like using the Hex over the Doom Pact there.
Oh, wow. Flame Tongue Totem.
He could have developed like in this exact same way, even if he went for the Doom Pact. He would have one less totem on the board.
Yeah, I like the idea of Flame Tongue after Hagatha to get the extra spell, but I guess, you know, when you're going to give up your token, or rather your totem hero power, Flame Tongue is not going to get much better.
And now we're just at the point where BoarControl finally found that skull, and being able to use that to then go off with the cube the turns that the demons go down. Once 2 Void Lords hit the board, you need a lot from Hagatha to try and bail you out from that one. Because even if you do kill those Void Lords, they eventually come back, thanks to Gul'dan.
Yeah, there's no Acidic Swampoo's also in SamTsao's deck. So the Skull Minari should be good to go.
I'm pretty surprised by that. A lot of times in even Shaman, people even felt the need to play 2 of those.
Yes,
but he
I
just,
do.
You know, went for no weapon destruction.
And
Part of that reason, too, is just because Odd Rogue punishes, you know, what
Right.
even Shaman is trying to do so well. So then having that destruction on turn 2 sometimes wins you that matchup.
Yeah, that's the primary reason. Odd Rogue is so strong. And BoarControl can even life tap here. This is a little nifty trick from the old days where before you draw, you end up pulling a minion with the Skull of the Minari effect. And now, SamTsao has the ability to develop as freely as he wants to. Maybe Sea Giant comes down here instead. It's a pretty sturdy minion. Godfrey's already been used. And you need as much power as you can to answer whatever BoarControl pulls out with his skull.
Yeah, and in BoarControl's position, I don't think he really cares too much whether it's going to be the Doomguard or the Void Lord. Just being able to make 2 copies of that is just going to be absolutely insane. And now that he did find that Gul'dan, and yeah, as you said, that was a heads-up play, realizing that you can go up to 10 cards here.
Yeah, and also very awkward position for SamTsao where Hagatha, you know, it kills his own board. Like, he would love to be able to set up that hero power.
But he just can't.
Yeah, it just sacrifices too much. And I wonder if he's going to do what you're talking about, which if you hero power, you might realistically get the Steering Totem, which is a 1/1 minion for Defile to just get, like, really easy clear.
Yeah, I think you're going to be in the position where you really can't afford to take that flip, just because what does that Spell Power Totem even do for you? You already have a minion next to the Flame Tongue.
Yep, precisely. No hero power. Doomguard.
Well,
there is
I feel like you're even okay trading both Doomguards into the Giant, especially when you have Gul'dan in hand. That's not even bad.
Well, you have Ansi Magic Shell also available. That makes it into 6. No, you can't do it because of the Flame Tongue Totem buff. Yeah, I like Hellfire a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, he had access to a ton of plays that would just win him the game on the spot here.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. A lot of times it's fun to try and dream up the situations of what Hagatha needs to do to win this game. But it's looking rough.
Okay.
What are you seeing out of Hagatha? Dream it up for me.
Well, specifically, I thought this was an opportunity, because I was thinking about like Doom Pack, but his follow-up play was pretty bad. So now you can trade Doom Pack and play the Corpse Taker. That can buy you some time, and then Hagatha can give you the follow-up. So before I was like, well, yeah, this is a position where I may just want to Doom Pack the Doomguard. But if I'm paying Primal Findota, I'm really sad. Oh my.
Is he going face here? That would be a fun way to try and win this game.
Yeah, play
just
like
saying,
Gen.
I'm not playing around anything.
Whoa.
I'm going face. I really want to see where the Sea Giant goes. I feel like if he did this play, he's got to go face.
I like the face plant if he's doing this too. Although realistically, killing a Doomguard is also perfectly fine too, because the 2 Doomguards can't kill the Corpse Taker, and then you have this ability for Corpse Taker to maybe get big buffs. But I do like the face plant. Wow, SamTsao. Every tournament I watch him play ends up picking, like, he always has like a game or two where he picks a really aggressive line, and I'm not sure if it's going to work out.
He probably hangs out in Twitch chat a bunch. He
Well,
hears that face is the place to go.
Is this potential lethal? Can we avoid proccing the lifesteal on the Corpse Taker? We have Cobalt Librarian and Anti-Magic Shell.
Yeah, I think this is lethal. You could go Kobold Librarian, Defile, Anti-Magic Shell, and I think that's it.
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, I mean, that's less than 10.
Probably Anti-Magic Shell first, right? No, it doesn't matter, I think. Okay, this works too.
Alright, turns out there was just more than one lethal.
Right. I mean, as long as you had some kind of Anti-Magic Shell play, it would seal the deal. But really nicely navigated, and that's going to be game number 3, going to the Cube Warlock. Even Shaman struggling. But as much as we've seen Even Shaman losing this series, SamTsao had to win with it to get to this point, as he's 2-0 currently. But this is looking kind of bad.
Well, the deck that he is targeting is still up. Trying to beat up on that Death Rattle Hunter over and over again.
Yep, exactly. And then SamTsao's remaining deck afterwards would be
Token Druid, I believe.
Token Druid.
So yeah, he has 2 good matchups, but even when it's the case that you have 2 good matchups, you're still unfavored in the series if you have to win 2, and the great majority of the times, because to be favored winning 2 games in a row, you would have to be above 70% in both of those matches. And I'd have to imagine probably Death Rattle Hunter's worst matchup is probably like 40%. It's a deck that really can just do such strong things that it's able to high roll even its bad matchups.
Yeah, because it'll still draw Candle Shot and Flanking Strike and Rexar.
But we've seen another player just go for the Token Druid. In a meta that Malygos Druid seems so strong, and I feel like the biggest reason is because some people are looking to just target this Death Rattle Hunter. And Token Druid with the wide boards does so well against it.
Yeah. That is the big downside weakness of Death Rattle Hunter. Those early wide boards.
They are so good at getting Prince. I've seen like maybe say 10 Prince decks today, and I think I've seen Prince in maybe 8 of them.
Yeah, I feel like he senses that his time is coming soon, right? Like in 6 months or so, we're gonna have rotation, and Prince Kellis says like, well, this is like my final hurrah, so let me just appear in as many hands, or rather starting hands, as possible.
I know that some players just have ridiculous theories that I know. One time Stan Udachi said that he thinks that Prince Kelliseth does come up more than it should. So sometimes it just causes players to go absolutely crazy, just believing that the stats aren't real.
I think Prince Kelliseth is quite possibly this giant social experiment for like confirmation bias, just to like prove that it is very much biased that kind of pervades our mentality.
For sure.
SamTsao with the curse of the 4-mana cards on every single thing. Unplayable. Also, I think those are all the unique 4-mana cards in this deck.
Yeah. I mean, they're still not bad ones to have. Of course, you're looking for the Wild Growth and the Nourish, but these cards are still pretty strong here. And we said how good Houndmaster Shaw is versus Druid, and we're just seeing that again here. That card is so hard to answer on curve. You need to, say, buff up a Spellstone 2 times to try and kill if the turn it comes down.
Right. And SamTsao, if he plays Whispering Woods, we're going to see a repeat performance from what we saw in the previous series with Impact. Mind
it was
Control
just
tech.
the exact same play.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of a Candle Shot, you have a Prince Kelliseth.
I mean, it's the case where if you do go for the Oaken Summons, if a Flanking Strike doesn't come out, it would need to be, say, that exact Mind Control tech to clear the Violet Teacher without taking any damage on the Shaw. So I feel like you're just trying to put out minions and hope that Shaw takes enough damage to try and clear it up with a swipe. But SamTsao is, again, going to go for that play we saw earlier, and it just is deja vu.
Yeah, 2 Whispering Woods, or rather Wisps, will be left after this play no matter what. Flanking Strike and Mind Control tech are both applicable here. Flanking Strike has a little bit more power application to snipe really annoying tokens like 2/2 treants.
Mind Control Tech actually only leaves him with 1, right? Because the 1/1 Wisp will
Oh,
get
you're
charged.
right. You're right. You're right.
But yeah, both of them looking pretty good here. This is definitely the spots you want to find yourself in as Hunter. And that's just part of the strength of the deck, that even in this being a bad matchup, if you say find this Shaw, you could just say play from ahead. It just makes it really hard for them to try and develop.
Yes, I think I agree with that, because your opponent plays Whispering Woods fairly aggressively on the board, so what you should prioritize doing is removing the board state. And I feel like because you have things like Witchwood Grizzly, you should be okay once you lock your opponent out.
And Boar is really having a tough time trying to decide between this Mind Control Tech or the Flanking Strike.
Yeah, one thing too to consider is Mind Control Tech's a little bit more stats because of the Calcef buff. I like it for all those reasons. Ooh, dead draw here for SamTsao, unless he has another 4-mana minion that I'm not thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the people just run the Oaken Summons with just both the teachers. They used to play, say, one Ironborg Golem to try and make it a little bit less dead, but then over time people just thought that that wasn't worth it. So SamTsao is only playing the teachers, so as you said, that's just a dead draw.
Right. And SamTsao can remove the hand message draw with swipe, but gives complete initiative over to BoarControl and doesn't even remove his entire board. That's like the worst part about it.
But I think you're in the spot where you just have to do it. Just leaving this Shaw up another turn, that's not what I'm looking to do. I've seen Token Druids come back from pretty crazy games against Death Rattle Hunter because sometimes they are able to, say, make those 2 Witchwood Grizzlies on the board. But if you are able to get to the late game and get Whispering Woods into Soul, you could, say, use your Savage Roar effects to just fight and clear those and then have those 2/2s left on the board afterwards. So even though that he is playing from behind, he's not entirely out of it.
Yeah, and the good news for SamTsao, not much great development. I mean, Witchwood Grizzly is okay, but it's not like the ideal setup. It's just a 3/6.
I'm always so scared. Whenever I leave this card alive for a single turn, I'm just ready. Okay, cube it, play dead it.
That's true.
3/12s.
The threat of cube play dead is actually what makes it really scary.
We see BoarControl is going for the Savannah Highmane. We've seen every single beast tech. We saw Skaka with the Swamp King Dread. Muzzy went for that charged Devilsaur, and now BoarControl with the Savannah Highmane. So a lot of different options for that 4th beast. Because you always play the King Crush and the 2 Grizzlies, and then trying to figure out what that last one is. A lot of people have different opinions on it.
Yeah, 2 Oaken Summons, no Violet Teachers, SamTsao. Pretty unhappy to say the least.
He's just looking at his sad hand over and over again and just feeling sad. I mean, he should always just find Nourish and then the UI off the top. I think that's what he's going to need because the pressure that's coming out with this Savannah Highmane on 6.
Little pause and hesitation. See if drawing a Defender of Arcs changes anything, which I don't think it should. Savannah Highmane still looks really good in this spot.
I think it's the case that he doesn't really want to do this double trade, and he also doesn't want to leave the Violet Teacher alive. So I might just feel that he wants to go for a little bit more defensive play.
Highmane just sets up really good stuff for the future too, though. It's hard to justify. Using Flanking Strike with Hunter's Mark is still pretty good development, and the best part about it is you can still push 7 damage, which is very reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, against Token Druid, there's not a lot of targets to Hunter's Mark besides the Teachers and even just like the 5/5 from UI.
Yeah.
So parting ways with that doesn't feel the worst.
Yeah. Can totally see that.
But BoarControl last minute decides that he does want to develop it, and he also is okay with going for this double trade. I definitely think it was the case that he did not want to leave that Violet Teacher up. You just don't want to open yourself up to just another wide board when you could see that currently you do not have an answer to it in hand.
Oh, SamTsao.
Is this the turn that you have to draw with like Branching Paths?
Yeah.
Your hand's just not doing anything. you could say go for that Violet Teacher and the Spellstone and clear up the Witchwood Grizzly, but then your Teacher just gets absolutely destroyed by the Savannah Highman.
Yeah, I think this is also the one turn that you can take damage and not be sweating too much. There's only 9 pressure on the board and you're at 33, so you could use it for draw and ideally hit ramp. Like Wild Growth would be really nice to help get him back on pace so he can go for like a big Spreading Plague combo turn.
Man, for a matchup that, is supposed to be really good, we've seen just Token Druid struggle time and time again. And that might be because we saw, say, just the Houndmaster Shaw on 4 into Mind Control Tech both games. But he's actually going to go for this defensive play, and this is going to make his Spreading Plague a little bit better next turn. Maybe if he picks up something like Power of the Wild to try and capitalize on the Spreading Plague a little bit better. Or if he even just finds Nourish to then go Spreading Plague into Soul of the Forest.
Yeah.
Wild Growth would also work for that game plan.
Now, this opens up Power of the Wild as a really big opportunity for SamTsao, and I think BoarControl might take notes on should he develop this into this. Cube pickup, though, onto the Witchwood Grizzly is exactly what SamTsao does not want to see. You can see also how desperate he was to avoid this possibility.
Oh, yeah, and now his board is not even weak against Plague, and now you just know that if this cube doesn't die, if you then gather the activators over the course of the game, you could just be alive versus a whole board of 7 minions against Druid. And it makes a lot of sense that SamTsao is saying this is the time to make the board, just because no reason to wait for, say, turn 10 for the Spreading Plague plus the Soul of Forest when you have that Ultimate Infestation in the hand. So just try and buy some time till you get to that Ultimate Infestation. But it's just still so awkward that you're staring at this Oaken Summons that's just absolutely dead. It's one of the advantages that the other deck would have. But now, the more taunt-oriented deck list did get a little bit worse with that Giggling Inventor nerf.
Well, I mean, any way which board chooses to develop onto the board, I am in favor of. I kind of like, Devastator to kind of get big stuff up. I like using Flanking Strike too. Don't mind even using Defender of Argus right now to keep himself from getting bursted down by any super cheese like Double Savage Roar.
That's how you know when you're in a good position, when you can make literally any play with the cards in your hand. It just still looks pretty good.
Yeah. I kind of just like making any kind of wall of defense, forcing your opponent to an awkward spot.
Do you like being ahead in the game?
I love being ahead.
It's very rare when it's the case for me, but
do you
when
like being ahead?
Yeah, that's when I start roping out because I need to savor the moment. I only rope when I'm winning, of course.
Yeah. You're a true hero of the people. SamTsao picks up Malfurion the Pestilent, and eventually we'll be able to play Ultimate Infestation next turn. Is it too late, though? Is it too late? The nice thing for SamTsao is that BoarControl has removal, but not a lot of the big punch with Katharina and King Crush. So it's not going to be as much pressure as you've come to expect in the late stage of the game of Death Rattle Hunter.
I mean, the way I'm looking at it is I feel like SamTsao has a real chance until BoarControl just finds that one activator. If he has access to just make those Witchwood Grizzly when he wants to, it's going to be really hard for SamTsao to come back on the board. But it could be the case that he could just UI, make that wide board, and BoarControl sometimes won't be able to kill off that cube right away.
Right. One Stalker, one play dead. Could be the difference maker. BoarControl picks up Ziliax.
And maybe even just like if a Rexar doesn't come out, maybe SamTsao could just play like a very long game where he's just trying to out-resource BoarControl.
Right.
Because we do see that his hand is fairly weak right here. Of course, he has an amazing board right now.
Right. I mean, Hunter's Mark could come down for maximum pressure. And that leaves the room for pretty much just Flanking Strike or Ziliax. And I think if I'm Boar, I'm done waiting around setting up a board. I think I just want to push damage as much as I can in this spot. And I think either Flanking Strike or Ziliax are fairly similar because they deal 3 damage to a minion.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder, this is actually going to be really interesting. Is it ever going to be the point where SamTsao is supposed to UI the cube so that it's only ever going to be 2 Witchwood Grizzlies?
Oh.
Because maybe he could be thinking that if he then makes the wide board and just clears that he could just have more resources than BoarControl. So that could be a very hard decision that he has to make.
Oh gosh, I forgot Ziliak's buff.
Yeah, that ends up lining up pretty good there.
Yeah, that means that you can play both these without having a Hunter's Mark. Actually, no, he could have done that regardless. Would have been nice. Maximum pressure. And now SamTsao has to choose what he wants to ultimate infestation. Ziliak is kind of hard to turn down. Your opponent already has demonstrated that he doesn't have any activator either. So it would have to be the 4 of. Although he did use tracking turn 1 too, right? So he could also have discarded it in tracking.
Ooh, and that's another dead draw for BoarControl. But SamTsao was actually yet to find that second copy of Spreading Plague. And now that he's at 10 cards, he always risks just overdrawing it.
Right.
But just having access to that, just Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest, and even just a Power of the Wild for the following turn, he has real chances of just clearing BoarControl's board and just playing just more minions than him.
Yeah, maximum pressure this turn looks like to be 16. Which happens to be just the armor that Druid has right now.
Druid is messed up when it comes to armor.
Yeah, as much as...
Isn't Warrior supposed to be that class? And now just Druid does it even better.
It's kind of a common theme. Paladin is like the better healing class than Priest, even though Priest is like default supposed to be healing. Not necessarily the case anymore, but for a while that was certainly what people would consider.
It's part of the reason why against Druid what's strong a lot of times is just creating these hard boards for them to deal with rather than just rushing them down.
There you go. No more armor.
You know, that's the first step in how to kill a Druid.
And also your opponent showed very weak development. So Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest, or anything Soul of the Forest is not terrible here. Your opponent, even if they played King Crush from hand, wouldn't be able to kill you next turn.
Yeah, and when that's the case, you know, even if you go low as Druid, you have access to both Branching Path and UI if you need it to go back up in life. I think it's just going to be the case where this is going to be the turn that he has to go for that wide board if he wants to win the game.
Yeah, 5, 10, 15, 16, 18. Oh, King Crush would be 26, but that's assuming SamTsao doesn't do anything defensive whatsoever, which I imagine he would want to, given that he has a cheap Spellstone.
Yeah, sort of like just going for the Whispering Wood, go for the Soul Force. Don't make this attack just because you'll take extra damage, and then maybe go for the Spellstone on the 3/3. Because it is upgraded once.
Oh. Oh? Oh? Oh!
Frodan, he just killed his minion so he has a 1/1 instead of a 5/3. Am I missing something? Is this so he can't kill off his spider?
I know what SamTsao is missing. He's missing a 5/3 on board. Oh my gosh! King Crush can still end this game.
The only upside to this was that he could not trade off his cube and his...
Oh, you're right. He can't trade the cube to set up taunts.
Okay, it makes sense.
Okay,
I take it back.
That's fairly brilliant. I like that.
It took us a minute. Sometimes getting in the mindset of the pro player, it's tough. It really is.
It's true. Your opponent, when they see a Soul of the Forest, knows what's coming next. They want to set up the taunt walls. But BoarControl has both Play Dead, Terrorsteel Stalker, and Deathstalker Rexar as an option. And it looks like he's choosing for the mass board clear.
There for sure. But he also could have just went for that Hunter's Mark on his own cube if he desperately needed those taunts.
Yeah. But those are 2 activators out the window.
We were talking about that BoarControl was running just low on resources, and that makes Rexar not only the perfect card to clear the board, but also just fill up his hand turn after turn, having these beasts come down. So now this is just where things get awkward again, because SamTsao ideally wants to play this Ultimate Infestation, but he's going to really need to dump cards first. You can't really afford to overdraw the second Spreading Plague or the second. Actually, he used both Whispering Woods. The first one came down on turn 4, so that was the second one. So he's relying just on this Spreading Plague as a way to make a board. I guess the last copy of Teacher counts too, but I don't think that's going to be able to mount a threatening enough board.
Well, could swipe this turn to clear off a couple minions. I mean, that Spider Bomb also proves to be a little bit annoying for anything he develops. So I kind of like swiping, but if you're going to play swipe, you sort of want to play Violet Teacher, but you don't want it to get hit by the bomb. So either way, SamTsao's development has been gimped significantly by BoarControl's pre-existing board.
Yeah, and there's almost an advantage of not swiping and keeping this board big for
That's
the Spreading Plague with the Soul of the Forest.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what he's looking for. Nourish, draw cards. Looking for an Arcane Tyrant, maybe.
Right, so this time he's at 10. I know that last time I said that, I got it wrong. And if he had a little bit more time, he definitely would have used that Innervate to then use a hero power. Yeah. Now it's going to be the case that that Spreading Plague might fall just to the dust.
Oh my gosh, this Adapt can be massive as well. If it's a big attack buff, it is. That's so much pressure coming out. Not to mention the Kraken Razor Moss threatening its own right. 4/3 Wind Fury. BoarControl wondering about Spreading Plague. Little is to know, SamTsao does not have it, and it is a pretty realistic chance that he's about to burn his Spreading Plague number 2. Okay.
All right, so that means he does have access to go for this Wild Growth into the Spreading Plague. Could use this Power of the Wild to try and live another turn. But even if he does that, it's going to be really hard to then win the game just because the Spreading Plague won't be able to be paired the same turn with that Soul of the Forest, and that means BoarControl can just basically fatigue the Druid in this situation.
Yeah, not having that Innervate be played for like that extra value of hero power or anything else like that jammed his hand. We'll see if this Wild Growth cycle can produce anything.
So, you know, SamTsao was the first person that we really saw without, say, the Death Rattle Hunter, without the Malagos Druid. And, you know, his Murloc Mage was able to get there. That was pretty sweet, but he's just fallen just the good decks from BoarControl.
Yeah, the problem is, it's kind of like what you were saying before. Death Rattle Hunter, even if it's an unfavorable position, still has a lot of really powerful tools to answer your opponent. And Spreading Plague, fantastic, but not good enough.
Yeah, it's just the case where it helps you live maybe 1 more, 2 more turns, but does not help you win the game in the long run.
Oh boy. That is a big
BoarControl wanted to, he could make 4 3/12s this turn by Hunters marking his own cube. I actually don't know. He would have the board space for that. Enough of the minions can die this turn.
Iron Begal or Kodo are both good in this exact position.
Oh.
SamTsao
understands with just the Teacher left, he does not have what he needs to try and win that series. So despite trying to beat down the Death Rattle Hunter multiple times,
right about now.